Welcome back to the Idea Morning Digest. It's now time for what's trending, and we see that Adefarasin warns of Nigeria's economic decline. Senior pastor of House on the Rock Church, Paul Adefarasin, has warned that Nigeria is facing deep economic hardship, describing the country as dead under the weight of the falling naira and rising poverty. Speaking during the sermon on Saturday, May 17th, Adefarasin said the naira's depreciation has made many Nigerians poorer, noting that salaries once considered substantial in the 1970s would now be worth far less in global terms. He urged citizens to study history and work towards rebuilding the country. His remarks come as the naira trades above 1,300 naira to the dollar, with food prices and living costs continuing to rise. Reactions to the sermon remained divided, with some Nigerians backing his message while others criticized his comments and past political statements. To start with, I like when pastors preach this. It's not always about salvation.
Exactly.
It's not always about what the prosperity and all of those things, but we should see more pastors talk about the reality of the country. But let's see the video before we, throw our 2 cents.
Nigeria is dead. Let's not deceive ourselves. Let me tell you something. I'm going deeper in a minute. Let me tell you something. Once you're counting in naira, you are poor. I was not born poor. My father's salary, his last salary, in the 1970s or 80s, I can't remember when it was about 18,000 naira. That was money. Let me make it clear to you. How much is a billion naira today in dollars? Or 1.4 billion naira? How much is it in dollars? Only $1 million, Perry. Do you know what a billion naira was when I was 15, 16? $2.8 billion. $2.8 billion. And we're taking it. Because we live in the now. We don't study history. They wrenched it out of our existence. And we don't research data to project our future, to know what tomorrow will look like. So we're not doing the critical thinking. So we have no combatant against our subconscious foolishness that determines our behavior.
Well, first of all, Mary, let me even start with the strong, the strong language used by the pastor during his sermon, and that language has hit a raw nerve across Nigeria today. Because when a popular pastor like him is I think he's known for conveying the experience, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, if is a popular person. If a popular person like him, very highly respected, religious leader like him, declares from the pulpit that Nigeria is dead and rotten, then because of the continuous fall of naira, then it shows that the deep financial pain of this country has gone beyond market talks. It is now. When I said it I was in a conversation with somebody the other day, and I was telling the person that because the person said poor people, the poor are suffering, I said the poor are suffering the most. If you say the poor are suffering the most, I'll agree. But it is not touching everybody in Nigeria. Even the people that we say are the rich, that we, categorize as the rich. It has become a daily survival struggle for average Nigerians. Because by pointing out that anyone who calculates their wealth strictly in naira today is fundamentally poor, the pastor is only highlighting a bitter economic truth, which is that inflation and currency devaluation are wiping out our purchasing power of the purchasing power of the middle class, and throwing millions of people into severe poverty. Because from middle class, from the talk of this one is in higher class, middle class, this class,
the lower class.
Now, so you go take, all of us go take enter, final class, and that will be poverty state. So if you can no longer afford things again, even if you say you are an average Nigerian or middle class, or what is there even middle class and lower class and this again? Like most Nigerians we say, I was watching what an analyst was saying the other day, and he said that we only have 2 classes in Nigeria. It's either you are rich or you are poor. There's no name set for it, like middle or upper or lower. Is that it's either you are rich or you are poor. So to fully understand, I think the depth of this issue, I just feel like we must look out. Let's even do the maths, and the history that this sermon references. He mentioned that his father's salary decades ago was, let me be sure, was 18,000 naira, which back then represented tangible amount of money. It was immense value, you get. So if we look at the historical data, 1 billion naira in the late 1970s that he was talking about and early 1980s was worth well over $2 billion as at then. Of excess value, sir. $2 billion.
Yes.
Know what $2 billion is. And today, because the naira has weakened so bad, significantly to over 1,300 naira to a single dollar, then the same 1 billion naira has shrunk to, let's say, less than $1 million if we are looking at the global value now. And that is a massive shift. Something that can worth in 1970s and early 1980s, something that can worth up to, over $2 billion has now been shrunk to like $10 million. I mean, that's it's not sure. Did I say 10 million? What am I calculating? $1 to naira, like $1 million. 18,000 naira. Let's just say it to be $1 million right now. It will be $1 million if I'm not mistaken. But I think this is a massive shift, and this massive shift explains why many families now are now working twice as hard as they can, just because they can no longer afford the same basket of foods, the same type of foods they can afford before. And we know what all these things are causing us. The value of our labor is now diminishing when we look at it, because our currency is losing its strength. And there we have our government coming out to say that in the exchange rate markets, the value of the naira is not doing a little okay. And that's why they want to now be borrowing farmers, so that we can kill or fight, or how should I put it, liquidity. But the situation has also sparked a serious debate online, just like we've seen, about the role of what the pastor is saying, of what pastors should say in Nigeria, and how they should interfere in politics. And I think that we're seeing a lot of divided reactions online, which many Nigerians are beginning to question, how the consistency of religious leaders as well. And some critics are quick to bring out past political, seasons, pointing out some of the prominent pastors, how some of those prominent pastors either stayed silent, or openly, supported policies that brought the country to this point. And then there's a growing feeling too among the masses that spiritual leaders should not complain when the economy gets completely broken, but should consistently hold leaders, accountable before things go out of hand. And on the other side, some supporters are saying, his supporters argue that truth has no expiry date.
Of course.
And that a leader speaking up for his hungry congregation should be praised, not attacked. I don't know where I stand now, but you get to know. You see me, outside here, so I'll tell you where I stand with this. But if we want to even build, let's stop playing games with Nigeria. I've been talking about playing games with Nigeria future too often for the past 3 days. It almost seems like we are playing games with Nigeria future. And if you look at the cold hard facts that we are faced with today, Pastor Adefarasin says Nigeria is dead and in coma. It is a terrifying statement, but anyone living in Nigeria at this current time knows the current price of food.
Of course.
Knows the current price of rice, knows the current price of fuel, knows the state of our local market. Is he lying? That is what I'm asking. No, this question is to Nigerians. Exactly. Is he lying?
Exactly.
Is he lying? Because when a bag of tomatoes hits over 100,000 naira in places like Mina, in places like Nasarawa, these are places that these things are, being farmed. Then what are we talking about?
Our cheap.
Our economy, we can say it is bad. It is actively punishing poor people. It is actively punishing citizens of the country. I was going to buy maize the other day, and the seller told me that because I was telling her, sell 2 for so amount for me. Now she was like, you know how much you are buying a bag of corn for almost 100,000 naira.
Okay.
That was what she told. That is too much in Abuja. These are places these things are being planted. But let us even stretch beyond this conversation a little and look at, the church. We had President. It's something I noted this down. We had Senate President Goswi Akpabio recently was telling us to be patient with reforms and that paying 10,000 naira. I mean, if we can clearly remember what he said just some weeks or months back, he said that if we are paying 10,000 naira for fuel, it is a fair price because there are no queues again in filling station.
Wow.
That before that we were paying smaller. He's insinuating that before we were paying smaller for fuel, there was queue, but now there is no queue, so we should be grateful. How can the political class ask for patience, my sister, when the currency is collapsing? Families are hungry. Families cannot afford 2 meals in a day. There are so many questions for Nigerian government because the government cannot keep telling us that the foundation is being laid while we see people living under that foundation that is starving to death. What kind of foundation do we even have in Nigeria? We're on shaky grounds, and at the same time, we must look at our religious leaders too with a critical eye. It is good that Pastor Adefarasin is speaking the truth today, but where was this first? If I want to sort of, pick small, let me just listen to what the other people are saying. If we want to, there's this analytical energy during previous administrations when the foundations of this economic room were being dug. But we remember the days of Pastor Tunde Bakre and others who led that. There was this massive protest they led that time with Save Nigeria group. I think that's the group they formed in Lagos years ago. But today, the economic hardship is far worse than what we were even clamoring for before, than the reforms we were clamoring for. Like, it's far worse that we don't even know what we are calling for again. We just talked about insecurity, talked about how it is leading to food insecurity too, talked about how it is leading to an underdeveloped nation as a whole. But then, we've seen a lot of people come out to say, let's pray. The last insecurity issue that happened in Jos, they came out and said they're holding prayers. And I'm of the opinion that we cannot pray our way out of bad economic policies.
Exactly.
We cannot. The government must act. God has, even the Bible says, God has given us dominion over everything. I don't want to sound too preachy here, but we have dominion over everything. Exactly. So why do we need God again to come and save us? What are we using what God has given us to do? We should use the power that God has given us if we want to even go to the religious aspect a little. The church must remain a constant watchman, not an occasional critic of what should happen in the... As a pastor, it's good to bring awareness. It's good to...
Of course.
It's more like we are having a discussion. We are talking. You are talking with your parishioners or audience or whatever. But it should be that, okay, you from your own end, what are you doing to change the situation to as well? You are a leader in your own capacity.
Exactly.
What are you doing to change it as well? But then let's have your 2 cents.
I like the fact that Pastor Adefarasin is bringing this to the church, because most people want to ignore the fact that these things are happening. And when they're in church, all they want to hear is just the preaching, the miracles, forgetting that when you leave the church, you face reality of life. You come back to that same society. And you face things that you're supposed to face.
Exactly.
So I like the fact that he's bringing this to the church. He's making them hear the truth the way it is, that these things are not working. We need to not only to pray, but to also act. And this is a direct message to the leaders to to put action to whatever we're doing, because you've said a lot. It's affecting us, whether you accept it or yes. In fact, you just have to accept, because what is happening right now, nobody is on denial. Nobody is not saying that he or she is not being affected. This would actually draw our attention to the worsening hardship of the country. What is happening? These are the things that are happening, and we need quick and fast solution. Our children are dropping out of schools. I mean, when I say schools, not just primary, secondary, even universities.
most people train themselves. But because of what is happening, they cannot keep up. Most of them are at home right now. Nobody is asking about them or what is happening with them and their family. So it's a call to action. That's what I see here. It's a call to action.
Exactly.
And this begins with the church people. If you think you're a church person and
the
God...
church people.
Okay, yes, I'm a church person too. So I'm speaking to myself. So if you believe you're going to church and you feel, oh, God will do it for me, I believe, I have faith. Having faith alone will not solve it though. Practicality is what we're talking about now. I always like talking about workings. I don't just like reading it on the paper. I don't just like, promises. I like action. When it's backed with action and we're seeing it that, yes, these things are playing out for us. We're seeing it with our eyes. That is what everybody is looking forward to right now. And I feel at this stage, at this point, he should not be criticized because he's just stating the obvious truth that most men of God would actually not say because they fear the fact that their members will be like, you're deviating, you're leaving what you're supposed to say in church to facing what the leaders, the politicians are supposed to do. The job is not left for the politicians only. The job is not left for the media only to pass the information. We as members of churches and pastors, any rank you're holding, even in meetings, you are to bring out these realities that this is what is happening. And even if we're praying, we should know that where we are positioning our strength of prayer to. And we should put workings to our leg and hand to it. Now, this would also...
heaven helps those who help themselves.
This will also encourage, national conversation among people. Now, people are saying that, yes, so these things, this hardship have gotten to the point where leaders in church are not speaking about it. Leaders, the government, the people in the office, the public office are also watching these people. They're not saying, okay, he's already everywhere. So it's a call to action. It will spike, conversations online, make people have the knowledge of, okay, well, this is what is going on and this is how we should, tackle it and resolve it and, have a better solution afterwards.
Okay, hopefully we have a better solution because it's so sad that citizens of a country or the naira the local currency in a country will be the symbol of poverty in that country. Very, very sad. I mean, so many sad news today, but you can continue the conversation by following us on our social media platforms and, share your thoughts and catch up on this segment and other previous episodes on our digital channels on Limex, on YouTube, and all our social media platforms as well. Up next is weather reports updates. Thank you for staying with us. My name is Cynthia Bassian, of course, and
I'm Mary Ojumajo.
Okay, from us here at Idea TV. Do have a productive day.